Salam, hello and welcome. I'm making this video with regards to an issue that I noticed as my bike was parked at home. I'll show you what I noticed. I have noticed few oil drops under the bike. I was actually scratching my head. The gear oil wasn't level. And since this is 2 strokes, there's only one kind of oil in the engine, so the leak is not coming from the engine. I also noticed a strong fuel smell. And when I checked, I found that the leak was coming from the carburetor overflow vent, which is this guy. Yeah, so the fuel is coming from this carb. I know that for a fact. Having this issue where the carb is leaking fuel or expelling excess fuel, it's usually caused because one of two issues. The first issue will be that the floater is not pushing the plunger all the way up to close the fuel inlet, and it's constantly dripping fuel inside these balls inside the carburetor. And as a preventive measure, in order not to have all that excess fuel going into the engine and cause a hydrolock, you have these overflow vents here. So when it overflows to a certain level, it starts expelling fuel from here. So this might be the first issue, or it might be that there is some dirt between the plunger and the inlet, which is preventing perfect sealing. So the plunger does not fully seal the inlet, and constantly we have a fuel supply coming to the carb, even when you are not using the carb, even when the engine is not running. What that means is I'm going to have to take the carbs, clean them, and make sure that the floaters are adjusted to the correct level and helping the plunger to do its job, as well as ensuring that the inlet, plunger, all other carb components are cleaned, including jets. However, this is not the only part of that issue. Carbs are not the only guilty party here. That's because when I'm not using the bike, I always keep the fuel switch on the off position. Since I'm having this issue, what that means, it's a combination of defects. So that means that the fuel valve itself is defected, because on off position it still supplies fuel to the carburetors. I'll take the fuel tank out, replace this fuel switch, and I'll take the carbs out, clean them, adjust them, and I'll show you how to do that. I'm going to take both carburetors out, the left side and the right side, both of them, service them, clean them, and put them back. Now, in order to be able to take the carbs out, first I'll have to disconnect the throttle lines and then disconnect the fuel lines on both carbs. And the carbs are sitting using 2 rubber boots, one here from the air filter side and the other one is on the engine intake or the reed valve side. Okay, so first I'm going to start disconnecting the fuel lines and taking this clip up. And then push or pull the fuel line up. This can be tricky to be done using one hand only. Now when it's difficult to deal with, maybe it's a good idea to push it using a screwdriver or anything else. Done. Okay, I'm going to disconnect the vent line. This little tube here connecting both carbs is for the choke. Keep it aside. I'll just pull it out. So now I can take the fuel lines out, and that can be done by unscrewing these caps. Here's one out. The fact that I removed the fuel tank to replace the fuel switch, makes actually taking the carbs out a lot easier. Now be careful with the throttle lines. Do not mix the left with the right. Each throttle line has to go back to its carb. Okay, so now I can unscrew the clips, one here and the other one here. Don't need to take the screw all the way out, just need to break it loose. This actually can be a tricky job. And there is one way that I do it, and that's to flip the rubber boot on the carb like that. I can take the clip out now and pull the carb all the way back. So now it's loose. So here's one carb out. Now I'm going to repeat the process with the other carb. So off the camera, I flip the carbs upside down to empty all the fuel that's there. Now I'll take the rubber boots off. I'll keep it aside for now. Okay, before I open the carbs, I'll spray it with carb cleaner to actually remove all the sand and dirt that's on the carb body, so nothing can go inside when I open it. Okay, then I'm going to wipe it with a wet cloth. By the way, I'm not going to clean the rubber boots with carb cleaner. Carb cleaner is a solvent, and it's a strong one. Now, all the rubbers inside the carburetors are manufactured and built to handle fuel and carb cleaners, but these are not. So instead, I'll just clean these with wet cloth. I'll keep a clean space. Yeah, this is just to prepare a clean surface with no sand or dust on it. Now, the screws on the carb are typically Phillips screws, but I have replaced these with 3mm hex screws. So I'll take the screw with the washer and keep it aside. Okay, this is one screw that I have ruined. I have torqued too much, little too much. So I installed nut on the other end of the screw to prevent having the screw loose. So taking the screw with the nut, put the nut with the screw and keep it aside. Now we're ready to open the carburetors. And looking inside, it does not look good. I'm glad that I decided to service these carbs. Okay, so I'm gonna come with the carb cleaner and spray it all clean. Make sure you spray little inside the overflow tube or from the other end. Keep this upside down for now on the side, then continue with the carb itself. Okay, what I will do here is I'm going to crack loose the main jet. This is the main jet, the pilot jet is here. and then clean again. Then you have to take the jet itself, look inside the jet, make sure that there is no debris, no sand, nothing stuck inside. And this one looks good. With the spray that I did, it looks good. So same thing with the pilot jet. Take this out in a second. Now, if you don't feel like taking the pilot jet out, what you can do is you can use this tube on the carb cleaner and spray it like this. And if you see the carb cleaner coming out from this end, that means that the jet is clean. Okay, I also cleaned this washer with wet wipe or wet cloth, put it back, and then reinstall the jet. The jet does not need enormous torque, just snug it. Okay, the pilot jet can be taken using a flathead screwdriver, small one. And here it is. So also take a look inside the jet. And with this one, I can see the light from the other end. I'm not sure if the camera is going to show it, but this jet is clean. What I need to clean now is the jet housing here. And I'll give it just a couple of sprays. Now we can put the jet back. Now here's something else that you need to be mindful. When these are sitting inside the bowl and the bowl is empty, they go down and they open the plunger. When the plunger is open, it allows the fuel to come from the fuel inlet and fill the bowl. When the bowl is filled, these floaters, they go up and the plunger closes the fuel inlet. Now if there is dirt, if the angle is not correct, this might be open and the fuel will continue to come inside the bowls and will come out from this overflow vent. And this overflow vent was installed to prevent the excess fuel in such case from going inside the engine and causing hydrolock. So what I need to do now is to take the floaters out. Actually the level seems fine. Floater and the plunger, which decided to fall, and then spray inside it. And you can see now the carb cleaner is coming from the fuel inlet line. And then spray the plunger itself. And that's it. Okay, so now to reinstall the assembly. Put the plunger back. Okay, so now you need to move it and make sure that it closes. In this case, I believe I'm just going to bend it a little bit to make it close more. That's it. So this is the movement that you need to check, and you need to see right here if the plunger is closing or not. Okay, that is all good. Now, before putting the carburetor back together, always make sure that the mating surface is clean, the gasket is clean, and the gasket is in good condition. Now here's a good gasket. It doesn't have any cuts or cracks, so this can be reused. In my case, I have installed or applied RTV as additional gasket because I had leaks from these gaskets. I think the defect is in the carburetor body itself. I don't think it's the gasket. And I'm done with this one. So now I can start putting the screws back together, but before I do that, I'll clean each screw. Just clean every screw and make sure that there is no sand on it. Not that the sand on the screw will go inside the carburetor, but just like to keep everything clean. Okay, this is the time where I put the nut. I'm not going to tighten the screw all the way now until I put all the other screws. Since all the screws are sitting in their places, I'll start torquing them. I'll just use the pliers to hold the nut. And this is not a standard procedure in any Banshee carburetor. It's just on my carburetor. Okay, this one is torqued. Then I'll go in crisscross pattern, so I'll torque the opposite one. Now be aware, the carburetor body is made of aluminum. Aluminum is a soft metal, so don't torque a lot. That's enough. And that's enough. And that's enough. This carb is clean now and ready to go on the bike. And I'm going to repeat the same process with the other carb. Okay, so now I have actually cleaned the carbs. I cleaned the rubber boots inside out. I cleaned the fuel lines, the clamps, and I also cleaned the engine intakes, both sides, and the filter sides. So now I'm ready actually to install the carburetors back on the bike. Okay, now I will put the carburetors back the same way I took it out. So I have flipped the rubber boot like so to make room for the carb to slide in. Now I'm going to first engage the engine intake side. Like that. Wonderful. Now I'm going to slide the clamp in and then do that. I'm not going to tighten these screws until I install the other carburetor, and that's just to make sure that there is enough room for the choke line that connect both carburetors. Right now, so with both carburetors are fully seated, it is time to install the choke tube. The tube needs to connect between this point and this point. And do this. Alright, cool. So the last thing is just make sure both carbs are straight 100%. There is a guide actually here that will make the carburetor set straight, but if it's worn, maybe not. Just make sure that both carbs are sitting straight. Now I'm ready to tie up the clamps. Okay, with these, I'll just wipe the barrels and the needle with wet wipe. Like that. Now I'll connect back the throttle lines. See, this groove on the side will allow the barrel to go in one orientation only. Now be careful when you install these. Make sure that the needle is seated in its place. Oh, there you go. Okay, so one end. No, put the other one in. That came very quick, very easy. Alright, cool. Now you can use the throttle and feel that everything is seated correctly, working correctly. There's another way to check that. Now, another way actually to check if the barrels are seated correctly is with this glass window here. So you go to the throttle, full throttle, and you can see that the barrel is going up and down. Okay, so then I'm going to install the fuel lines. And then put the clip back. Also the other fuel line. Pull the clip back. Oops. Cool. So I need to reinstall the fuel tank, connect the fuel line, make sure there are no fuel leaks after connecting the fuel lines, and it's all set. Now is the time to install the fuel tank, start the engine, and make sure everything works okay. Cool, so now with the tank installed, I'm ready to connect the fuel line. Actually now I'm ready to fill the tank with fuel, and I keep an eye on everything underneath, make sure that there is no leak. Okay, so now I'm going to open the fuel switch, put it on position, and my main focus will be to check if there are any fuel leaks from the lines here in the connection with the carburetor. This one is slightly leaking. It is leaking. Also coming from the overflow. You can see the overflow. Okay, this is not connected well. It needs to be pushed further down, like so. Okay, so now I'm going to start firing the engine, and I'm pretty sure it will fire. Started with a high rev. I'll check the throttle connection, the throttle caps mainly, make sure they are closed properly. If not closed properly, it allows more air to come in, and that's what happens. I was investigating and doing several checks to find out what's the reason behind the high revs. And I think I know the answer. It's this guy right here. This clamp has broke. So this clamp is located on the engine intake, What that means, when it's not fully sealed, it allows air to leak that's not coming from the carburetor, causing the high revs and creates lean mixture. If you face similar situation with intake leaks, this can cause an overheat. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to replace this bad clamp. I bought a new clamp or clip. This is the old one and the neck is broken. This guy is shut. So I'm going to install the new one, and I'm pretty sure that the engine will idle normally. Okay, here we go. I installed the clip, and the clip, actually this particular clip can go on in one way only, because there is a groove here. There is a groove in the clip and a matching piece on the intake, so it can go only in one way, and it's a special clip. I thought if it was a normal clip, then I would buy it from any spare parts shop or building material shop even. But I got this from the dealership because it's a special one. Now, for the sake of good measure and to avoid having any issues as I'm riding, especially that I ride far away from civilization, I also replaced the clamp, the intake clamp on the other carburetor. So both clamps are new now. So I'm going to start the bike now and see how it behaves. Once that intake leak is treated, engine starting normally now. Nice and crisp. So it was an air intake issue. Air intake is dangerous, be aware of it. It caused the high rev. If I drove or if I rode the bike in that condition, the engine will be running in lean mix. Fuel to air mixture will be lean. It means it will be burning hot inside the engine, will cause overheat, will cause issues. Most of two-strokes failures are because of either bad mix or overheat. Okay, so in the beginning, as I turned the fuel switch on, some fuel came from the overflow vents on both carburetors. After I started the engine, as you can see, fuel switch on, there's nothing coming out. So with the engine vibrations, all the float balls, everything got back to its position inside the carburetors. So if you see this issue, don't rush it. Take out the carburetors and redo the job. Start the engine, let it idle for a few minutes, and then observe and see if the problem persists. Most likely it's gonna go away. So now you know how to clean your carburetors and service them. Thanks a lot for watching. Take care, be safe, and do it yourself. اطلع هلا مش مشكلة.